We are under this class selector. The class selector, you can define style rule based on the class attribute of the element. All the elements having that class will be formatted according to the defined rule. Let's run this code for a typical example. Let's go to our FTP. We should open another file. Let's call this file this time around css tutor2.html. Because normally I've told you that we are going to be using an embedded CSS inclusion. So to use an embedded CSS inclusion, I've told you that you are going to be using the syntax called the scripts. Then script it must have compulsorily 3 attributes. The first attribute of it that it will has is the type. The type is, it must have the type, the media, and the last one is the rel. So the type will always have a value of what? Of text/css, and the media will always have the value of what? Of all. I've already explained this in the last chapter. And the rel will have a value of style sheets. So these are the 3 most important attributes of scripts, style sheets, when you want to use an embedded style sheet. So this is the open script, and then you have the closing script. So all your CSS code must be in between this open and closing tag. So for example, now whenever we want to whenever we want to define a class, we make use of the dots. Look at it now. When you see something like dots represent a class. You are trying to define a CSS, a class in CSS. Whenever you use dot symbol, it represents what? A class symbol. So black, for this kind of CSS code now, the black that you have right here is what referred to as the selector. Is what referred to as selector, and the color you have here is what referred to as the property, where what you have here is what referred to as the what? The value. So our black stands for what? Selector. So whenever you have dots, then the selector name, whenever you have something like this, then you are defining a what? You are defining a class. So another example is this rule render the content in black for every element with class attribute set to black in our HTML document. So let's write a normal code right now for class. Normally, remember when I was teaching you how to write a CSS, I told you that you can use our attribute is always, as in our selector is always, must always be an HTML tag. But here now, black is not an HTML tag, so you can't call this a normal selector. A selector should not be anything more than the HTML tag. But black that you have here is not an HTML tag. So that is why we can't use this as a normal style rule, because our black that we have here is not. But I'm just using this to explain to you that whenever you want to write a class must start with what? Dots. Full stop. It must start with this symbol, dots. Then the class name will be there, as in what we refer to as the selector name is going to be there. So right now, if you want to write a normal selector, as in a normal style rule, so normally, remember when I was teaching you, I told you that you can write a selector can be H1, H2, H3, any HTML tags. It's the same thing as what? A selector. So if I want to write HTML H1 right now, and I want to use a class, I can decide to say H1 dots what? Dots black. You may be wondering that what is the meaning of this code. Let me just explain what it does. This code does for you. Let's say you have a text that maybe I want to go there. Let's say you have this text now, and you give this text H1. You give this text H1. Even though you give this text H1, it's still not going to have the property, the color of this. Let me change this color to red. it's still not going to have color red. Why? Because although h1 is declared as color red, but you use h1 here, but still not, this h1 is still not going to have the color red. Why? It's very simple. The reason h1 will not have color red is you don't all for your selector, you don't use ordinary h1. Assuming you use h1 now, assuming you use ordinary h1 now, whenever you give any text or anything in your HTML page, whenever you give it h1, it's going to have the property that you want it to have for h1. So right now in h1 now, how many properties do we have? We only have one property, and the property is what? Is color. Then the value of that property is red. So we believe that whenever we use h1 throughout our web page, they are going to have what? Color red, since you use ordinary h1. But right now we don't make use of ordinary h1, we make use of h1 dot what? Dot black. And I told you in the previous example that dot black represents what? Anything you use dot. Dot means what? It means a class in CSS. So the only thing that can make this h1 to have a property of color red is when you say h1 and you give that h1 a attribute of what? You give that h1 a attribute of class is equals to, you now say the class is equals to what? What's the name of the class here now? I've told you that anything that starts with full stop is your class name. Your class name is what is after this full stop now? After the full stop on your selector, what is there? You have black. So when you say class black, then by the time you refresh this web page, you will discover that I want to go there will have retained the color of what? Of red. Let me use break line here. Let me use break line PR here. So this same code, let me rewrite it down here. I want to go there too. Let me put I want to go there too. But this time I don't want to use class. You discover that this h1 will not have red color. Why? Even though your selector, even though your selector is h1, it's still not going to have h1, because here now you have represented that although my selector is h1, but h1 it should only give h1 this property that I have here only if and only if there is a class called black. So since this one is ordinary h1 and it does not have the class called black, it's not going to retain the property of h1. But since this one is h1 but has the class black, and I've told you that anything after any HTML tag that starts with full stop, anything after HTML tag, full stop, any other names that is after that full stop is referred to as your what? Your class name. So whenever you see after HTML tag, whenever you see this normal selector, everything here that you have here is a selector. And I told you that selector is always what? Is always an HTML tag. So but the HTML tag on this selector is h1. So after this h1, what do you have? We have full stop. So this full stop represents a what? A class. So if you now want to know the name of the class, then anything after this full stop is the name of your class. So right now if I use h1, for me to be able to see all this property, for me to be able to for my test, I want to go there to be able to display this property that I gave. To be able to display this property, I have to use in my h1, I have to use a class what? A class black. So this time around, the system is going to know that h1 class black, then it's going to trace it h1 class black, then it will give you the property, whatever property that is here. But right now I have only one property. I can add another property, size. I can add another property, size, or let me change this one to 22. I can add another property, size. So but this only one, this is the only one I want to go there, will be only one that will have these two property. But I want to go there too will not have this property. Why? Because it's only h1. But what you declare here is what? h1 and a class. So except you use in this h1, except you apply a class black to it, it will not give it this property. So let's save this and refresh our web page and see what it looks like. So the name of our web page is csstutor.html2. So let me go to my site. So to discover my IP, my site's URL, my domain name, I have to log into my account because I don't know it in my head. My username is market, then my password will be password for Ewebtutor 13456. Market 123456. So this is my domain. This is my domain name. This is my domain. So to access this file now, what's the name of the file? css2.2.html. To access it now, I just write css2.2.html. So enter. I want to go there. So right now there is a mistake. And what is the mistake? This I want to go there now, and I want to go there too. We expect that I want to go there should have a color of what? Of red. But where is that mistake? Where is the mistake? Let's see where the mistake is. Hey, sorry, the mistake is this. This open tag is not script, it's style. That's the mistake we made. It's style, not script. So the syntax to start as in the syntax that you are going to use whenever you want to embed CSS in your HTML page is style, and you have to close the style. So the style will be what we have these three attributes: the type, the media, and the rel, not scripts. So the mistake we made is instead of using style here, we make use of script. So let's save it and refresh our web page. So let's refresh it. So by the time you refresh it right now, you will discover that this first one will have a color of red, and this second one will still remain in black, even though this second one is H1 and this one also is H1. But what really makes them different is because of the CSS that we declare is not ordinary H1. Assuming we declare ordinary H1, these two, since they have H1, since these two has H1, assuming we declare ordinary H1 here, since this one has H1, this one also has H1, they will have the property of these two property. But since we did not declare the ordinary H1, we declare H1 dot a class name. Whenever you use dot, it means class. We declare H1 and a class. And what's the class name? The class name is black. We declare H1 and the class name is what? Is black. So it's until there is H1 and also a class of black, that is when this that particular text is going to display this property. But if there is ordinary H1, it will not display the property, except there is H1 and there is a class of H1, there is a class of black. So I believe you understand that right now. So this is not a normal code for a class. A normal code for a class should has a HTML tag dot the class name. So another thing that we can have is we can have something like paragraph dots, maybe you say pink, then you declare it that if somebody should use paragraph and the color for the paragraph, you said it should be pink, you don't want to give it size. So let's say maybe instead of me to use break line here, let's say I decide to use a paragraph. And I use closing tag of paragraph. Even though I use paragraph here, it's still not going to take this property. It's not going to have a color of pink. Why? Because I use a paragraph and I use a class called pink, except I add a class here. I add a class that is equals to what? Is equals to pink. So that is when I want to go there too, will retain the properties of what? Of pink. So let's try it. So I've told you that whenever you want to use a selector, can you see it has a property of what? Of pink. So a selector is always an HTML tag. But the only thing is there are some selectors that they also have a class. So that means you first press the HTML tag dot the name of the class you want to create, and whenever you want to apply it, to any element or any text in your web page, you have to use the tag name and also the class the name of the class. Class is equals to the name of the class, then it will retain the property. So you may now be wondering that why are we using class with our selector? It's very different. It's very the reason we are using class. Let me just explain the reason right now. There are some times that you may want to type, maybe for example now you have a test Ola, you have a test Jide, and you have another test Shegun, and you want the three of them to be H1. You want the three of them to be H1. These three texts, you want them to be H1, 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 H1. But this time around, you want see normally the tag should be, you want them to be H1, 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 H1. Normally, if they are in H1, every property, their property must be what? Must be the same. But right now, even though they are in H1, you still want their color to be different. How are we going to do this? So that's one of the reasons that we make use of class. Because with class, so what I'm trying to explain is, even though they have the same tag H1, 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 but I want their color to be different. So that's the benefit of class. So right now I can declare a H1, I can call it blue. Then I will give it to a what? I will say color blue. Then I can declare another H1. It's still the same H1. I can declare another H1, I can call it pink. Then I will give it a color of what? A color pink. I can declare another H1. This time around, I will give it a color red. And the color will be what? I will give it a class of red. This is a class name. Then the color will have red. So this time around, for ordinary a tag which is H1, I gave it what? I wrote this tag H1, I wrote it in what? 3 different dimensions in the CSS. So even though the tag name is H1, but I gave it different class. I gave one blue, I gave one pink, and I gave another one red. So right now, the first one I can say is a H1, but it has a class of what? A class of, I can call the class name red. The second one I will say is H1, but it has a class of what? It's a class of what? Of pink. I can call it pink. The third one I can say is still H1, but it has a class of what? Of blue. So this time around, even though the tag that I'm using is H1 on the CSS, but when I want to apply the CSS to my HTML code, I still make use of H1. But this time around, I'm just changing their class. But if I know that Ola and Jide, they have the same color, then I can give Ola class red, and I can also give Jide class red. So that means Ola and Jide will have color what? Color red. But since I know that these 3 tests, they have different color. So even though they are H1, it's just that their class is different. H1 of these will have a color of what? Of red. H1 of this will have a color of pink, and H1 of this will have a color of blue. So let me save this and refresh my web page and see how. Can you see now? Ola, Jide, Shegun. So you may be wondering that in some sites you discover that they are making use of maybe the same header, they make use of the same H1, but you discover that the color of their H1 is always very different. You may not be wondering that is it every time they make use of, there are ways you can use making use of the font tag in HTML. Making use of the font tag, you can use, there's an attribute on the font, they call the attribute color. So you can use that to change the color of an element. So if you want to make this one red now, you say font color is equals to red. This one also font color is equals to, it's just a waste of time. In case you have like 5 or 10 things that have color red, will you be telling them the font color is equals to red every time? That is why HTML is not really good to set the beautification, the design of a site. That's why they make use of CSS to design a site. Because with ordinary h1.blue and you give it a color of blue, anytime you use h1 class blue in any with any text in your web page, is going to give them what? Color blue. So you don't need to retype the color again. So that's just about class. So right now, consider this now. Look at this now. They make use of paragraph. Like an example I did the other time. The tag that they make use of is the tag they make use of is paragraph, but they give it paragraph p dot what? Dot center bold. So whatever properties that they give is going to apply to this what? To this text. So that is just about the class selector. So another selector that we have is the ID selector. The ID selector works the same way as the class selector. The only difference is just that instead of using full stop, you make use of what? Hash symbol. So if you use full stop, that means you are using the class selector. But when you want to use the ID selector, you make use of the what? The hash symbol. So let's talk about the ID selector. It's still the same way. So right now, I can say h1 hash blue, h1 hash pink, and h1 hash what? Hash red. So these three elements now, if I want to give them the color red, pink, and blue, all I need to do is, instead of using class red, since I'm using hash this time around, and I've told you that hash is what? Is an ID selector, not a class selector. Is when you are using full stop that you are dealing with what? Well, if you use full stop, you are dealing with class. That's why you say class red, class pink, class blue. But now that you are using hash, is an ID selector, so you just change this class to what? To ID. So that means ID selector work exactly like a what? Like a class selector. The only difference is just whenever you have full stop on your CSS code, you change them to hash, or you make use of hash. And whenever you have class in your HTML code, maybe in your element, in your HTML code, then you change them to ID. So if I save this, I refresh it now, it will still give me the same thing as what I have here. The reason is because I changed my class to ID, and where I have my full stop in my style sheets, I change it to what? To hash. So whenever you use h1 hash blue, it means you are declaring a style for h1 tag. The hash here represents that is an ID selector, and the name of the selector is what? Is blue. So the same thing with this. The tag name is h1. Hash represents that is an ID selector, but assuming it's full stop will represent is a what? Is a class selector. Because it's an ID selector, that's why we are able to use ID when we want to call them in our code. So let me just save this and refresh. So if I save this and I refresh my web page now, you discover that, can you see, it will still give me the same thing. So that just tell you that the ID selector works exactly like what? Like the class selector. The only difference is just the full stop to hash, and also where you are using class to call it. For the class selector, you make use of ID for the ID selector. So those are just the two things. So let's go back to the next one. So I believe I've already explained all this. So this rule render the content in black for only this code right now. It enter the content, render the content in black for only h1 element with the IT attribute. So look at this code now. Normally the tag is h1, but because they use hash here, that means an ID selector. And what's the name of the selector? The ID selector is black, and it has color of what? When you see hash 000 is an X code for black. It's black. So right now, look at it. When they want to call it, then they are going to call it based on what? H1, then ID is equals to what? Is equals to black. That's how they will call it. So that's why we say that it's render the content in black for only H1 element with the attribute set to black. So look at this second one now. The true power of ID selector is when they are used as the foundation for descendant selector. So for example, now look at this code right now, and I've told you that whenever you have, so look at this example right now. This is, it's, I believe I explained to you in the previous chapter what we refer to as descendant selector. So look at it. The name of the tag that has this property is h2, but this h2 will always work in your code if and only if h2 is present inside what? A tag that has an ID black. So what do we mean by this? What we mean by this is all level 2 heading, that is a h2, will be displayed in black in this color. All level 2 heading will be displayed in this color if and only if this heading 2 it lies within the tags that has the attribute ID set to black. So whenever you have any other, if h2, let's say for example now, let's do this example. You know, normally whenever you have hash black is referred to as what? A ID of what? Of black. The only thing, look at this now. Look at this h2. The only thing that can make Ola to retain the color of black is if and only if Ola is h2, but not h2 alone. You can see that hash black space h2 here, and I've told you whenever you have two things separated by space in CSS, I told you that that's what we refer to as the word this descendant selector. You can go to the previous chapter. I explained the descendant selector in the previous chapter. So right now this is descendant selector. The only thing that can make this h2 that we have now, which is our Ola, the only thing that can make Ola to have a color of black is if and only if this h2 that you have here is present inside another tag. Let's say h1 now is another tag. It's present inside another tag. Not only present inside another tag, but inside another tag that has an attribute called ID. And that ID is what? It has the value of what? What's the value of it? Our ID here, it has the value of what? Of black. That's the value of black. So let's end h1 and h2 will be here. Then let's end our h1 here. So right now our Ola we have what? We have a color of what? Of black, because this h2 is present inside what? Another tag, but this time around it's not ordinary another tag. It's present inside another tag that has attribute ID set to what? To black. So right now look at this code now. Our code, the code that we have here, our selector right now is what? Is a descendant selector. The name of the tags itself is h2, but this h2 must be found inside another tag. It can be any tag, but that tag must have an ID what? Set to what? Black. But assuming we have something like this, h2 h1, I've explained this one to you, it means what? The name of our tag must be h2, what is here in second, but the h2 must be present inside what? Inside what? Inside h1. So if you have something like this now, if you have this code, this CSS code now, and we have something like this, our Ola will also be what? Will also be black, because h2 is present inside what? Is present inside the tag h1. So when you talk about descendant selector, whatever tag that is the second in the selector must be found inside the tag that is what? Is the first in the descendant selector. But the reason the other example that we did previously is different is because we are not using two tags. We are using one tag and what? One ID. We are using one tag and the other is ID. So because it is hash, that's why we say ID. But as we have full stop now, is class. So because it's hash now, is an ID. So right now h2, before this property will be given to Ola, that means Ola must have a tag of h2 surrounding it, and that h2 must be surrounded with another tag that has the attribute of ID, and that attribute of ID that the other tag has must have a value of black. So that means our Ola right now will not be what? But assuming we have ordinary h2 which is surrounded by another h1, our Ola will not have this color, because although h2 is surrounded with another tag, but it's not ordinary another tag. It's this other tag must have a what? A ID of black before Ola will display whatever color that is inside this place. So that's just about that. Then the other things that we have is the child selectors. You have seen the sender selector like the previous one I explained. There is more type of selectors which is very similar to descendant but have different functionalities. Consider the following examples. Body is a tag, is an HTML tag, is greater than paragraph. Paragraph also is an HTML tag. So right now we are having two HTML tag. Then all this forms your selector. This is your property and this is your value. Note the property is not always color. It's not compulsory it should be color. The property can be size, can be anything, can be image screen, or can be background image. The property can be anything, but we are just using this color because you are very familiar with this color. That's why we are using color. But by the time we are trying to write a very big program, a very complex application, and we are trying to use CSS, you'll be able to understand because we will involve other types of properties. But I believe in this example now, the only property I've been telling you, using to teach all these courses, all these subjects that I'm teaching under CSS, is just the color and the size. I make use of the size also sometimes. So, but right now we're under the child selectors. This rule will render all the paragraph in black if they are direct child of body elements. Other paragraph put inside other elements like the div or td etc. will not have any effect of these rules. What we are trying to say is that normally you can have something like this in your HTML page. Let's first copy this code. Let's copy this code inside our CSS, our style. So normally our style, the normal procedure to create a HTML page is what? Starting from HTML, then we go to the head, then it's under the head, opening and closing tag, that we always have our style. Go to the head, then we start from the body, then we also end the body, then we end the words, we end HTML. So this is a normal structure for HTML web page. So right now look at what we have here. In under our style, we have body is greater than p and with this property. So but let me just write a simple code here now. Let me write something like this. Paragraph, I am going home. Let me set this color to red so that you will see the difference. Red, I am going home. So let me have another h1. Let me give it paragraph. I am going home to, and let me end the paragraph. Let me end the h1. So look at this example now. From our content now, I told you that the child selectors, we are under the child selector now. This is an example of child selector. This rule will render all the paragraph. It works exactly like the descendant selector. The only thing is that in the descendant selector you don't make use of greater than, you make use of space. If you have something like this in descendant selector, this is a descendant selector, because when you have two tags that is separated by space, it's called a what? A descendant selector. For this kind of tag, anything that has paragraph will have the color red if and only if that paragraph is inside the what? The body tag. So this paragraph now is inside the body tag, is going to have color red. This paragraph that you have also here is also inside the body tag, so it's going to have color red. So I am going home and I am going home too, we also have the same color red, because they are paragraphs, they are inside paragraph, and their paragraph is inside what? Lies inside the body. That's the definition for descendant selector. But right now we are dealing with the child selector. The child selector, instead of separating body the two tag with a space under the descendant selector, to write the child selector we are going to separate the two tag with a greater than sign, and that's why we said this is what a child selector, because the two tag that we have, whenever we have two tag that is separated with a greater than symbol, then we say we have a what? We have a child selector. So this example right now, it must be, the paragraph will be given this property, that is say the paragraph will have a color of red only if the paragraph is a direct descendant of the body. What do we mean as this? Normally we are talking about, whenever we are talking about the descendant selector, we said the paragraph will have it only if the paragraph is inside the body tag. We don't want to know whether the paragraph is a direct descendant of the body or is not direct descendant, the direct descendant of the body. We don't want to know, because we are talking about the descendant selector. So, but when we are talking about the class selector, the child selector, the paragraph must be a direct descendant of the body before it will have this property. So look at it now. This is body. You see that this first paragraph now is a direct descendant of this body, because this first paragraph now, this paragraph now is not present inside another tag. It is present inside the what? The body tag directly. So this I am going on, we have the property of what? Of red, because the paragraph is present directly inside the body tag. And that's what we are trying to explain there. This rule will enter all paragraph in black if and only if they are direct charge of the body. That is, the paragraph is direct child of the body. But right now, this paragraph now is the direct charge, the direct charge of this body. So it's going to have the color red. But look at this second one. You discover that this second paragraph is not the direct child of this body. And we know when we are declaring the child selector, the paragraph, whatever is here in the second one place after this greater sign symbol, must be the direct charge of whatever is in this tag. So right now we are dealing with paragraph and body. So whatever is inside the paragraph must be the direct child of the body. So in this example now, this is a direct charge of this body, so it will have this color red. But this second one is not this paragraph, or this second one is not the direct child of this body. Why? Because this second one is also placed inside another tag before this body. So this second one will not have color what? It will not have color red, because it's not the direct child of this body, because it's placed inside what? Inside another tag. But let's say I have another paragraph down here. Paragraph, I call it we. Look at it. You will discover that this body now, this paragraph now is also direct child of this body, because this paragraph is not placed inside any other tag. It is placed directly inside the body tag. So I am going home. And we will have color red because they are direct child of the body, whereas I am going home too will not have the same color as them, because it's not a direct child of this body. So let's save this and refresh our web page. So let's refresh. Can you see? I am going home. It has a color of what? Of red. And we also have a color of red. But because this one is not the direct child of that body, it's not going to retain the color. So that's just about. So you will see that the child selector and the descendant selector are almost very the same. It's just that in the child selector, the two tags are separated by space in the descendant selector, while in the child selector the two tags are separated by a greater than sign. So, but in the child selector, the paragraph must be direct, must be inside the body tag, like this code now. These two tags, the second tag must be a direct child of the first tag. But when we are dealing with the descendant selector, the second tag may or may be the direct child of the first party. It doesn't matter whether it's direct or it's not direct. If you are using a descendant, once it is descendant, whether it's direct descendant or it's not direct descendant, it does not concern a descendant selector. But for a child selector, it is whether it's a child, it depends on if that particular text is going to have the property that you want to set for it or not. So if, like this example now, the paragraph must be a direct child of the body before it has the color black, like in this example. So the next one is the attribute selector. You can apply styles to HTML elements with particular attributes. The style rules below will match all input elements that has a type attributes with a value of text. So right now I've taught you about the input elements when you are creating your forms. So I've taught you about the input attributes. So right now you can apply styles to HTML elements with particular attributes. The styles rule below will match all input elements. Look at it, this is an input element now. So when this is an input element, so right now we are setting the type. You know, every input element always have a type, whether the type is submit, whether the type is test, whether the type is reset, whether the type is button, anything. It depends on whatever the type is. So right now, if for every input element, if the types, their attribute type is equals to text, then all that elements as all that forms is going to have a color of what? Of black. So, but yeah, I can change the type to what? I can say submit. So anytime there is a type called submit in my form, then whatever colors that I specify here is going to give it. So you can practice this as an example, but make sure the tag, the element you are using is what? Is an input element. So that's just on this. So the next thing that we are going to talk about is the multiple style rules. You may need to define multiple style rules for a single element. You can define these rules to combine multiple properties and corresponding value into a single block as defined in the following example. Like the previous example that we have been doing, I've always been using a particular property, just a property. For each one now, I use a color, ordinary color. But this time around, it's not only, I've told you that it's not only a property, there are all the styles, like H1, H2, that they can have. So note, the selector can add as many property as possible. But just in the previous example, I've always been using one or two, the color and the size, as the property for your selector. But right now, look at this example now. For this H1 selector now, how many properties do they use? They use the color, the font weight, the letter spacing, the margin bottom, the text transform. They use more than up to like 5 properties. So your HTML, as in your selectors, can have more than 1 or 2 properties. So it just depends on you knowing that, okay, for my H1, what did I want to give? What property did I want to give anything that uses H1 in my web document? Does I want to give it color of green? Did I want to give it the size of blue? The size of 20? Did I want to give it the font weight of normal? Did I want to give it the letter spacing or the margin bottom? Then you specify. So for this example now, let's try this example now. So let's run this. For our H1 now, it has like this 6 property. Let's call this H1 now. So this is our H1. So since we are not using descendant selector, we are not using anything. So we are not using the child selector, we are just using normal. So H1. So for H1, this H1 right now I'm going on to should have all these 6 properties. So let's save this and refresh and see what we have. Can you see? I am going home to. Do you see the way it structure it? Because we gave it a letter spacing of 4 EM. That's why you see that from one letter to another letter there is a lot of space inside it. It's not the normal space that used to be there. From this G to this O, there is a spacing, letter spacing. This is all referred to as letter spacing from A to O. So if I want to decrease the letter spacing, instead of 4 EM, I can change it to 2 EM. Let me save and refresh this. You'll discover that the letter spacing will have reduced. Can you see? It has reduced. So right now, for my H1, instead of me to just declare color as this only property, I can display as many property as possible. Right now, I use I am going home, although I use a lowercase. That's why you can see a lowercase. That's why you can see a lowercase. But this lowercase now, the text transform, even though I can decide to change this to uppercase. So even though in my test, when I was writing the test, I use lowercase throughout, but in my CSS code, I use a uppercase. So that is why CSS is very, very important. It just change everything, even though what the user is entering is a lowercase. It just change everything to what? An uppercase. So let's refresh this. Can you see? It will change everything to capital letter. So even though what you enter when you are typing your test, even though what you enter is a small letter, look at it, even though what you enter here is a small letter, all true. But because you said for every H1, and I am going home to is also H1, you said for every H1, you said they should have it a property of what? Text transform to what? To uppercase. So even though if I use capital letter all through here and I ask it to text transform to lowercase, you will see that everything that is capital letter here is good. When I run my code, it will change everything to what? A small letter. So that's just to tell you that for every selector, it can has more than one properties. So that's what we refer to as the multiple styles rule. Then the other things that we have is the grouping selectors. You can apply a style to many selectors if you like. So like this style right now, H1. Let's say this property now, I also want my H2 to have the same property. But if I just press H1 and I press H2, if I press H1 and I press H2, you will discover that my H1 is going to retain this property and my H2 will not what? Will not retain this property, even though I want them to have the same property. It will not explain the property. Let's save and let's refresh. Can you see H1 has this property, it has this color, it has all the properties that we declare inside our style. It has it. But this second H1 does not, the H2, the second test, which is H2, does not have it. Why? Because you have not declared the style for this H2. So if I want to declare the style for my H2, and I want my H2 to use the same property as what my H1 is using, the first method I can do is just to copy all this and paste it here, and paste it, and change this place to what? To H2. So right now, my H1 has this property, and my H2 also have the same property as H1. So look at it. When I run, if I run this code now, you discover that the two tests, they will be equal because you have declared, can you see, H1 and what? And H2. H1 and what? And H2. The reason this one is big and this one is small is because in H1, the color of H1, I've told you that H1 is the biggest. H2 follow, H3 follow, H6 is what? Is the smallest. So from H1 to H6 is decreasing down. That's why you see that this one is the biggest, this one is the smallest biggest. So if you press H3 now, H3 will be smaller than H2. So that's why you see them that they are, but they are almost the same thing. They have the same thing. So right now, the same property as my H1 is what I gave my H2. You can see that this property is the same thing as this property. So that is why they have the same property. I'm only telling you the reason that makes them different in size. Although we did not declare size in our property. That is why they have the normal default size. So if I have declared size here, they will have the same size. But because I did not declare size, then h1 already comes with a pre-default size. And if you are using the previous size, the predetermines the size, h1 is always greater than h2. That's why you have h1 greater than h2. But assuming I declare the size for my h1 and also declare it the same size for h2, they will have been the same thing even though they are h1 and h2. So right now, h1 has the same property as h2, but note, this is just a waste of your time, because why are you declaring h1? Also, you are declaring h2. You declare h1 separately, you declare h2 separately. Normally, this is the normal way it ought to be, assuming their property are different. You should declare your h1, you declare your h2, and you should make use of your h1 and h2 depending on whatever text you want to give them, like this example. But this method of declaring h1 and h2 is only applicable if you know that your h1 property is different from your h2 property. But because h1 property and h2 property in here, they are the same thing, why must you declare h1 like this and also declare h2? You are just wasting your space and you are wasting your time, because they have the same property. No need of declaring them separately. What you should have did is you should have said h1 comma what comma h2. So this is telling you that the tag that has this property is h1, also is h2. So that means you are saying that h1 and h2, they share the same property as what is here. So this code now will still give you the same thing as what we have previously. Instead of you to declare them separately like this, because they have the same property, h1 has the same property as h2, there is no need of you writing h2 again and putting the same property as h1. All you just need to do is separate them by what? By comma. So this time around, whenever you say h1, it will use this property, and whenever you say h2, it will still use the same property, because you say that this the tags that has the selector that has this property is h1, comma means what? And h2. So whenever you call on h1, it will use this property, and whenever you call on h2, it will also use this property. So let's save this and refresh our web page. You now discover that we still have the same thing as what we have now. We still have the same thing as what we have now. So can you see? So we still have the same thing as what we have. So instead of you, when you know that two tags they have different, two selector, when you know that they have the same thing, instead of you to be declaring them, it's a waste of time. You can just put the two tags together, then separate them by comma. If I want h3 also to share the same property as what we have here, I'll just put comma h3. If I want property in the paragraph, also paragraph tag to share the same property as what you have here, I'll just put comma paragraph. So it's just like that. So these are another examples. So right now you want I've told you that whenever you see hash means what? ID. You want your ID called content, and your ID called footer, and your ID called supplements. You want them to have what? You want them to have this property. So whether you use anywhere in your HTML page, wherever you use attributes ID, whether you use attribute ID content, is still going to have this property. Whether you use attribute ID, when you talk about attributes, paragraph can have attributes, h1 can have attributes, body can also have attributes. All these HTML tags will have attributes. So irrespective of whatever, because you do not put h1.hash contents, you not put any tag dot anything or any tag hash anything, then that means you don't want to use a specified tag. So right now, if you use dot hash content, what you are trying to say is any tag may have these attributes. So irrespective of whatever tag it is, once they have attribute ID content, automatically they have this property. Even though they have attribute ID footer, they also have this property. Even though they have attribute ID supplement, they also have these attributes. So that's what we are trying to say. So now the CSS rule overriding, We have discussed 4 ways to include style sheets rules in your HTML document. We have given you that way: the embedded, the external, the at imports method, and the line include style sheets, style rules. So we have already talked about that one. So handling old background. So for the case of theory, please just go through this content so that I will have more knowledge about all we are trying to talk about. But Ewebtutor is only for practical purpose. So that's why we are just explaining everything on a practical basis. So for you to understand much more about how we are trying to say, normally you've watched the videos, you've watched the practical, you've understand how to do it. But for you to understand the theoretical reason for what we do, so it's better for you to just go through this content. So right now, the next section is the CSS comments. All programming language make use of comments. Many times you may need to put additional comments in your style sheet blocks. So it is very easy to comment any part in your style sheet. You can simply put your comment inside this tag. So whenever you want to use comments, every programming language makes use of comments. So comment is just a description of what that code is all about. But when your site visitor, when they refresh your web page, they are not going to see, the comment is not going to display. The comment will always be will just be inside your source code. If somebody should have access to that your source code, they can see your comments. But when your site visitor, when they are refreshing your web page or they are running your web page, they will not see the content, they will not have access to the comments. So the comment is just for it to guide you on what you are doing. So for this H1, H2, H3 that I have right now, I can decide to comment this so that somebody that has access to my source code will be able to understand what I'm doing right now. I can decide to comment. Whenever you want to comment, you open your comment with this symbol and you close your comment with this symbol. So your comment, whatever you want to comment, will be inside this opening comment tag and the closing comment tag. So right now I can say H1, I can say H1, comma H2, comma H3, comma P below have the same property. So right now, somebody that is just looking at this source code, even though the person does not know about CSS, once he read this comment now, he will know that H1, H2, H3 and paragraph that is looking here now, he will know that they have the what? They have the same property. So right now in this comment now, even if I refresh my web page and I save it, you won't, if I refresh, let's say I save my web page, let me save it and let me refresh it, you discover that what you are seeing here is still what you will see. Even though you've written a comment, the comment will not show. It's only somebody that have access to your source code that will be able to see your comment. And comment is useful when you want to document your code, so that even though you document your code now and somebody have access to your code 10 years later, they will still understand what you are trying to do at that particular time. So it's good for you to be commenting your code. But whether you comment your code or whether you didn't comment your code, your program will still run. You will discover that since we have been running CSS code in this chapter and the other chapter, you discover we've not talked about CSS, the comment, and our code is running. By the time we refresh our web page, we are seeing our results. So whether you use comment or you do not use comment, your code will run. But comment is just used. It's just used when you are documenting your code. So this is comment. So to comment in CSS, you make use of this open symbol and you end it with closing symbol. So your comment will now be in between the open and the closing symbol. So you can have as many comments as possible, but make sure that that comment you want to comment must be inside the words, the embedded style sheet. So inside the style open tag and the closing tag, your comments must be located there. So you can't place, if you place your comment outside your style, then there will be an error, because this thing is going to display in our web page. So note, your comment must be between the opening style and the closing style. So your comment can also be here. It can be anywhere so far it's inside the open and the closing style elements. So that's just about commenting. You can see this is an example. So here now the comment, they said this is an external style sheet file. So and after they said this is the end of the style sheet rule. So all this thing that you have here must be inside the open and closing style sheets. So the next thing that we are going to talk about is the CSS measurement units. Before we start actual exercise, I would like to give a brief idea about CSS measurement units. CSS support a number of measurements, including absolute units such as inches, centimeters, points, and so on, as well as relative measures such as percentage and em units. You need this value while specifying various measurements in your styles rule, e.g. border equals to 1 pixel solid red. So look at it right now. There are various ways in which you can specify your measurement. Normally the ways I've been using is just 1 inches and so on. So the units in CSS, we have the percent like what we have right now. So I can decide to say size is equals to 20%. So you still see the output. We have your measurement can be in centimeter. You can say size equals to, maybe you say font color, you give it size. Now size is equals to maybe 2 centimeter. Your size can be inside the em. Can be the unit can be em. You can say 2 em or 4 em. Your size can be ex, just like a dimension. Your size can be in inches, 15 inch in millimeter. PC. I believe doing your mathematics, maybe in your primary school or so, you understand this is PC, picas, this is points, and this is pixels. So doing your mathematics, I believe most of these units for measurements, I believe you already understand it. So no need of us explaining deep inside it. So you already know that this is just a measurement. So for you to just convert this measurement to other measurement, maybe from inches to millimeter, at least for the conversion rates, you can search site like Google. They will be able to tell you how to convert from inches to maybe how many inches will give you millimeter, or how many millimeter will give you inches, so vice versa. So but in your measurements in CSS, you can use either of these units. Is that you use the picas, or you use the points, or you use the pixels, but the most generally used one is in inches. They make use of inches, they make use of centimeter, millimeter, so on. So whenever you want to write any CSS code that deals with measurements, the best thing is for you to know the kind of measurement that you want to use, the kind of units of measurement you want to use. So thank you so much.